Hey everyone, welcome back to Ben Robinson Guitars. Today we have something a little different on the channel. Let's level the frets on this Les Paul. And sometimes it's like, oh, I don't know how to do that. It's scary and I'm going to make a mistake. It's actually easier than you think. Fairly simple tools. One thing you do need though is some elbow grease. Here's how I do it. This is how I go about leveling frets and getting a guitar back in top playing condition. So just hold tight here and I'll just describe what in the world's going on. Now the first thing, I repaired this neck, this Les Paul. It had a snapped headstock, and I don't know, it's been a handful of months ago. And rather than go through and do just a full setup after I did the repair, what I really wanted to do was just let it settle, make sure there wasn't going to be any issues with the repair that I did. And I mean, it was a pretty bad break. Actually ended up adding splines in the back, and so it's been under string tension for months now, and it's been played some, but it really needed some work here on the fretboard. So I've inspected that, no issues with the headstock repair. But one of the first things that I do when I start thinking about doing a fret job, and these are plenty tall enough, they don't need to be replaced, they just need to be leveled. The first thing that I do is I use this gauge, and it's got two scales on it. It's got one for 24 3/4, one for 25, and the other for 25 and a half. And you can just lay it on here, and it just goes around the frets. Now, what I do before I before I level anything, I want this neck here to be as just dead flat as I can possibly be. And how I do that is I put this gauge on, and I use a 5/1000 thickness gauge, and I just look at various spots to see if I can slide that under there. And right now I'm happy. I can't slide this thickness gauge under any of these slots here. So these cutouts are over the frets, and then I'm literally just trying to slide this finger gauge under here between this edge and the top of the fretboard. So I'm happy with how I was able to get this level right now. Now, it did not happen out of the gate like that. This neck had quite a bit of forward bow to it. So the first thing I tried was just tightening the truss rod by hand to see if I could pull that neck back. And you get to the point where it's just like, I'm not going to tighten that truss rod anymore. It was close, but when I had this sitting on here, I could still slide the 5/1000 gauge under there. I even want to say I think I could even slide the 10/1000 gauge under there. So it wasn't right. So if you run into that, one of the things that I have found to be effective is I tape this down really good. I tape it over here, and then I put blocks. I put blocks in there, and I'm just going to do a quick demo here. So I'll put a block there, and I've made a caul that's got a little bit of a radius here, and I can set that up, and it really, with this pad, it really matches the contour of the back of the neck. And then literally I clamp it, and I introduce some back bow. Now before I do that, the truss rod is completely loose. There's no tension on the truss rod at all. It's just in its loose state. So go ahead and clamp this and introduce some back bow. I let it sit for a couple of days, seeing that if I can get just some kind of movement in that neck to start bowing back. I leave it for a handful of days, and then while it's still under tension, I start to tighten that truss rod. And I get it to where he's like, that's probably enough, loosen everything, and I recheck to see how flat I am. And in this case, it was what the doctor ordered. So right now, and I still have adjustment in the truss rod too. It's not like at its end, but I can't get that 5,000ths gauge under there. So it does the trick. So if you have that issue, just a little tip and trick to give you guys a little more movement. All right, so let's talk about how in the world that I do this. I want to say the first thing I do, I'm going to check the radius, and I'm getting old, so I have cheaters. Now, the first thing I do is I look to see what the fretboard radius is here. I'm going to guess it's 12 if I was to hazard. 12 looks pretty good. It's definitely not 10. 12 looks pretty good. Let me go to 14. I'll check 14 just to see, and it's definitely not, it's not 14. So 12 isn't a perfect fit, which is normal. A lot of times these edges over here, and even the guitars that I make, I mean, you're putting a radius on this fretboard by hand, and sometimes you get a little heavy on some of these sides over here. And this is just again, it's a little heavier on those sides. So 12 is real close. A lot of different ways you can level the frets, and I've done a multitude of different ways. Where I am at right now is I like to use a block, a flat block. This is a block that was machine flat, so I know this surface that's got the paper on it. I know that is dead flat, and then I'll lay that on there and I'll run it back and forth. The other thing that I've used in the past, and it isn't this one, it's not this one, but other times I'll put some adhesive double-sided tape or something on here, and then I'll start with like 320 grit. Now this is a 7 1/4, and this is a 7 1/4 radius. This is 9 1/2, so I obviously I can't use this one. But I'll put that sandpaper on a 12-inch radius block, and then I'll use it this way. As far as consistency goes, my experience at least is I get better results with this than I do with this. And when I say better results, what I'm talking about is when I start checking levelness of the frets, and I use a fret rocker, I have better results with this. I'm touching up fewer frets with this than I am this guy. All right, so neck is flat. I do that. Again, the other reason why I use a dual action truss rod is because if this neck had a back bow in it, I can use that double action truss rod to bring the neck forward. So I end up with a dead flat neck. And again, with this gauge, I'm not able to get a 5,000ths feather gauge between the gauge and the fretboard, so it's flat. All right, had to shut the camera off for a second. I was looking for my Sharpie. So what I'm going to do, and I hope I can position this so you can see it real well. So what I do is I'm going to come through here and I'm going to highlight all those frets. So I'm just using a black Sharpie, and we're going to highlight all that. So I'm going to set this down. It's easier for me to do it, but you're going to do that with on top of every single fret. Is what that does is it gives you a reference point, so you know where you're taking material off, and then you kind of get an idea of how much material you're taking off. Because these frets they're larger frets, they're taller, and I'm going to call them jumbo frets. I didn't measure them, but that's what they're definitely not mediums, so they might even be, they're big frets. But they're very flat on the top. And the owner of this guitar is having some performance issues, and part of it is because of these frets are so flat. And there's plenty of material here. I'll just kind of give you my rule of thumb. Let me check these. And when is it time for a fret level versus a fret refret? And I always just measure. All right, so we've got those marked. And I'm going to grab a pair of calipers right here. And I'm just going to measure this one right here, and I got 54 thousandths. I'm going to measure him down here. I got 55 thousandths. And I'm going to measure this one over here. That's not a good one. And I got 57 thousandths on that one. So there is plenty of material on these for a level versus needing a refret. And I'm going to tell you, I won't get nervous until after leveling. I'm down in the 30 or 35 thousandths range, starting to get pretty small there. But there's plenty of material. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my gauge. And what you want to do when you do this is you want to kind of keep that line straight. You don't want to be going at an angle like this. You're wanting to follow the contour of that fretboard. So if you see, and I'm literally almost just using the weight of this aluminum block to do the work. I'm not really pushing it down very much at all. But here's what I want you to see. So I've just ran that just a little bit over there, and let me get here to where I can see. Now notice that fret right there. Now you can see the areas where it's shiny. Those are your high spots, and then you can see the black where your low spots still are. So that fret right there, he's got all kinds of issues. He's and then you look at this one right here, and he's completely clean. So he was the high spot that we touched up. So we're going to keep going. We're going to keep going on this until we're satisfied that all the high spots have been removed. All right, let's take a look here. And again, there's some really good, you can see the progress here. So as we're up here at the nut, you can see that fret there is shiny. That one there is good. You can just see that one spot there about where your G string is. See that little black there? We got to clean that up still. It's not quite there. And then you can come look at this fret right here, and he's still got some edge work to do. And now notice these down here are starting to look better, but you still got those low spots there at the B and the high E string. So just keep your eye on it and keep going. This position with the camera here, it's kind of in the way, but that's okay, we're gonna get it. And as far as the grit on this, the paper grit that I'm using, it's 320 grit. It's just an inch wide, or it's either inch or 3/4, I don't remember, but it's just a roll that I buy, and then use double-sided tape on this aluminum block. Okay, it feels good, and as you do this, just really start to trust your hands and even the sound. I'm at the point now, I've done this not enough times where I literally can almost tell by the feel and the sound, and there were some indicators right there. It's like, yep, we're real close. All right, let's take a look here. We're very close. Let's take a look. So again, nothing, and notice on this fret right here, see how over there on the high E string it's a fairly wide flat spot, and then up here on the low E it's narrower. That is very, very common. We have a little bit of work right there where the E string is. Still got a little bit where that's been rounded off. We'll work on that a little more, but we're very close. We are very close to being done. So really I'm going to ignore this side of the fretboard now. I'm pretty happy with what I see, and I'm going to focus more on this side, particularly this area right here. So I am pretty happy with that. Next thing up, let's check. Let's see how good we did. Now, you know, everybody, you can buy a gauge, one of these fret gauges like this, from just about anywhere. But here's the thing: my preferred method. And I want to make sure you guys see this because this is a big deal. A lot of times when you put this gauge on there, and I hope you can see this, and I'm not blocking it with my hands, or I probably am blocking it with my hands. So a lot of times what you're looking for, and this level, these three frets are flat, they're even, but a lot of times you're wanting to move it this way, and you're checking for that kind of motion, and that is an effective method. But what I have found is you're more accurate if you kind of spin it, and because if this is the high fret, it's gonna want to pivot off of this point. So really, I'm checking both. I'm really kind of feeling it this way, but I'm also feeling it with just a little bit of rotation like this, because if it wants to pivot on that point right there easily, then that is still a high spot, and we're talking a very small amount, but that little attention to detail makes a better player. So we'll just come out here. So I'm in there, and really this time I'm checking that, but I'm really kind of spinning it, and I hope you can see it. I'm really kind of doing this rotation here. I check 3 spots. And the more you do this, the more. Okay, we're gonna check this spot right here because there's a little spot there that caught my eye with the black Sharpie mark. I'm okay with that. Yeah, so I found one. So if I really can't hardly feel, and I really want to zoom in and let you see this. Let's see where we're at. So the interesting thing is when we check that fret right there, I can't really feel it rock, but I can feel that there is just a little more tendency to want to rotate than what I prefer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I'm on the right spot. I didn't lose my space. Yeah, it's right. It's not the whole fret. This is very common. So I just mark that little tiny little spot there, and then I get 320 grit, a piece of 320 grit paper. I'm going to put some tape on either side of him. And I just use my finger. I'm just going to hit that spot right there. And pretty much as soon as that black mark that I made, once that black mark is gone, that's probably enough. Still needs a little more. Probably more so right there now. I think I got the original. I think I got that first spot. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that black line right there. Put my tape back on. Always use tape. Because you think, well, I'm above the fretboard. And then you're going to mark up the fretboard. How do I know? I know a guy. Doesn't take much. Alright, let's check him. I'm happy there. I'm happy there. It's just, and it just wants to move just a little bit too much. I still need a little more down here on this end, right about there. There we go. I'm happy with that. So you didn't, I mean, you saw how much I used that sandpaper. It wasn't hardly any at all. And oh man, we got a really high one there. That's real high. Again, it's just on this one side there at the low E string. But we're going to have to work on him a little bit. Right there about that mark. I know he's high, so I'm working on him a little more. Let's check that. Much better. Tiny little bit right there. And the thing is, when you're doing this, if you have any doubt, just hit it. Because at the most I'm removing maybe a thousandth of an inch off of here. But as simple as that tool is, it's a very, very effective way of checking your frets. All right. Okay. Once we're happy with our frets being at least level with one and each other. Again, we have that really bad flat spot. This is a real good one. I mean, just look how flat that fret there is, and that's going to have a playability issue. So what we need to do is we need to crown that fret. So rather than the top of that fret being flat, flat like this, we've got to introduce some curve back into that fret. And honestly, this is the hardest part of the job. I'm going to pick this fret right here to demo on. Actually, I'm going to pick this one because this one's going to have probably about the least amount of work. So I go ahead and I mark that again, and I have this fret crowning tool, and this one just happens to be a fret guru. I like this one. It fits fairly comfortable in my hand, and the other thing I really like about it is it's got multiple sizes. It's got a medium size and a large size. Now, what I have found is effective is I always start with the medium size, and you don't have to bear down. Bearing down is not the point. And the other thing is you don't want to like come start down here. Make sure you're catching you. You don't want to start way down here and go down like this either. What you're really wanting to do is just follow the curve of that fretboard. Now the nice thing is, and again, you let the sound and let your hand tell you because it gets smooth and there's less drag. So I'm happy with that. Now let's look at our mark. All right, we marked that. Now you can still see, hopefully that picks it up. You can still see that there is a little center black line there. Sorry for the picture. I hope this turns out. You can see that little line there of Sharpie marker. So what I'm going to do is, that was the medium side. Now I'm going to come in with the large size and I'm going to touch up the top. You don't have to make the black disappear, but what I look for is a uniform thickness all the way across. And this to me is just about perfect. And man, it's hard for me to, it's this fret, it's that fret right there. And hopefully this shows up. You can just see an ever so slight line of the black magic marker that is still there. All I look for is it uniform all the way across, and you know, about a 1/16 of an inch, it's maybe probably about a 32nd of an inch across there. That to me is just about perfect. So that was, there's 22 frets on this guitar, and that just happened to be the first one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I mask this fretboard up, and then off camera I'll go ahead and just level the rest of them. And nope, I was gonna say I thought I had a. Well, I'm just gonna show you these. I don't even know what they call them, but they're fret shields, fretboard shields, and they get it from Music Nomad. This one's actually for a Fender 25.5. All my guitars that I produce are 25-inch scale, so I have one for mine, and I really need to get one for 24 3/4 because they're just so fast. Literally, I'd be like, oh, okay, you know, throw that baby on there, tape him off, and we're good to go. But I don't have one for a Fender, or I don't have one for a Gibson. So when it comes to taping the fretboard, let me turn the camera down a little bit and get it a little closer. I'll just do a couple so that you can see. And I use two pieces of tape. I just cut it off and catch both sides. And as long as I'm, you know, butted up, that edge is butted up against the fret, I'm happy. Alright, so I'm going to go tape the rest of this. I'm going to repeat the same procedure that I did for this fret right here, and then I'll turn the camera back on. Catch you guys in a minute. Hey everybody, back. I've got the frets crowned, so let's zoom in the camera here a little bit and you can see what that looks like. And I'm hoping this shows up in the light a little better. Let me get it. So when you see this first fret here, and I really hope you can see it, there is just an ever so faint line right there down the crown of that fret, left by the Sharpie. This here's another one I think you might be able to see pretty good. And again, what you're really looking for there is a uniform width of that black line all the way across. The narrower the better. But my big thing is as long as they're all relatively the same across the fretboard, and they're the same across the length of the fret, that's usually where I end up stopping, because there is a point of diminishing return on doing the frets like that. All right, so you kind of got a little bit of a picture there of what those frets look like, and you know, how well they're crowned. Next thing to do is we prep for polish. My tried and true method, it's really actually quite simple. I start with 400 grit wet dry paper, and when I do it, let me zoom in a little bit here so you can see what I'm doing. I start with this edge first, at light pressure. We're not here to remove material, we're just here to polish. And I just use little circular motions around those edges, you know, where your hand is going to be. A little harder to get in this spot. That's about all it takes. Do the same here on this side. You're really just knocking any of the burrs off that showed up because of the... Alright, once I hit those edges like that, then I just lightly scuff with the length of the fretboard. And what I found that this does is it just kind of rolls those edges over just a little bit. Again, we're not here to remove material, we're just here to polish. Once that has been hit a handful of times, I like to use my finger, because you know when I press on the fret, my fingers are going to conform to that radius. So, and then I go with the length of the fret, and this is important because as you bend, you don't want to have any catches. There we go. I feel like Okay, I think I'm pretty good with a 400 grit. Something else you could go to 800 grit, you could do that. What I found that I like is 4/0 steel wool, and just hit each one real good, and this really shines them up quick. Have that pickup pretty much just completely covered. Turn the camera a little bit, make sure we're catching that. So, you know, steel wool, this is a, you know, the magnetic pickup here, that is pretty much completely covered, and compressed air is your friend here. One last step before we take the fretboard or the tape off is I just use a Dremel tool, and I've got some fine polishing compound. I don't remember, it's either fine or medium, and I just buy these cloth mandrels from Harbor Freight. It's locally, it's where I can get them, and they're not very expensive. And I just get a good coating of this powder on there, run it at a fairly high speed, and we're gonna catch this top fret. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. So again, and buzz it right on there. You don't have to do it a lot. I just go by look. That's probably plenty. Usually 3, maybe 4 frets before I need to reapply the polishing compound. But notice the difference. Look at the difference between those 2 frets. Looks really, really, really nice. So you don't need to watch me do all that. I'm going to hit all the remaining 21 frets, and then we'll be back. Hold tight. All right, everybody, I've got the tape off, and I've polished these frets, and wow, they look really, really good. I'm going to zoom the camera in here for just a second so you can take a peek and see what they look like. And those frets look great. Nice, shiny, smooth. They're going to play great. One last thing I'm going to do before we start setting this guitar up, and hopefully you can see this. What I'm going to do is, and I've used the fret rocker. I've went across all of them. I'm happy with the way that they are. I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to take my calipers here, and I'm just going to measure a handful of these. Let me get my cheaters on so I can actually see something. I'm just going to measure a handful of spots and see how uniform they are. So that guy is about 56 thousandths. He is 54, 52, 56, 56, 57, 55, 53. I'm going to zoom the camera over here. And hopefully you guys can see from this side. Measure a couple more here. 55, 56, 58, 56, 55. So they're all, I don't remember what the lowest one was, probably about a 53, 54, somewhere in there. And the tallest one I think was a 56, so real close. You know, we're going to put 9s on this guitar, and it's going to perform absolutely great. One thing I do like to check is what this side edge feels like. I mean, the bevel here has been polished, but you know, there's always that opportunity for a little bit of burr on this side, and there's a little bit there, and so we can solve that with a little bit of work with the file here, and again, there's rough edge or a file surface on this side and this side, but these sides here are smooth. So I'm just going to come in here, and hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. The camera's always in the way, you know that? So really what I do is I use that flat side against the wood, and I just kind of come up and round him over. Doesn't take a lot of effort, doesn't take a lot. In fact, doing too much is probably as bad as not enough. Now that I can move a little better. All right, and one last thing I'm going to do, I'm pretty happy with that. Take 400 grit paper, it's the same as we used before, and just lightly scuff the edge. Kind of try to hold the angle that the frets are beveled, and just give it just a nice slight cut. You don't need to go heavy, just a little dab will do that. Smooth, smooth. I'm happy with that. Always trust your hand. You know, trust your hand with what the player's going to be feeling. All right, that's it. Thank you guys. That's it. That's how you polish or level and polish frets. Easier than you think. Just takes a little bit of elbow grease and some simple tools. If you like this content, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me if I'm doing it right or wrong. I'd love to hear from you. Catch you guys soon.